high for the longest shutdown in the history of the United States government.
In the last 21 days, without a secure border, approximately 42,000 migrants have sought illegal entry.
We're endangering the safety of our food supply, the security of our airlines.
That's 115 homicide charges for illegal aliens in the last 21 days.
Where their normal pay period salary should be, there are zeros. Zeros.
21 days is 3 weeks. That means at least 900 Americans have died because of heroin.
Well, the back and forth on Capitol Hill, it's pretty empty now. Everybody's left there. And there really isn't any progress going forward in the negotiations to end the partial government shutdown. The president tweeting a bunch this morning, including this tweet in which he said the fake news media keeps saying we haven't built any new wall. Below is a section just completed on the border. Anti-climbing feature included, very high, strong, and beautiful. Also many miles already renovated and in service. So what happens now, and where are we going? Let's bring in our panel. Charles Hurt, opinion editor for the Washington Times. Charles Lane, opinion writer for the Washington Post. And Jason Riley, Wall Street Journal columnist and senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. Okay, Charlie, it doesn't seem like it's ending. The president said he's not right now going to declare a national emergency, but said that he can at any time.
Sure, and I think the reason that he made that statement is because he feels pretty confident that he is holding a winning hand, at least politically speaking, in the current environment. That you know, when your opponents are saying that this is a manufactured crisis, that there's not really a problem at the border, and doing something like building a wall is immoral, that he feels very confident that he's winning that. But when he went to the border, he took with him his lawyers, and he also took the head of the Army Corps of Engineers, because I think that it's clearly a strategy that he's thinking about. And I think that, you know, from my conversations with lawyers who've looked at this, I think that he does have legal standing if he wants to declare an emergency and do it that way.
Here is the president on the national emergency and Senator Murkowski on this.
If they can't do it, I will declare a national emergency. I have the absolute right to do it. It says as clear as you can.
The real concern that I have is the precedent that this then sets. Because this border security is Donald Trump's priority. We don't know who our next president may be, but it may be a president whose number one priority is dealing with climate change. He says, I don't care whether I have the support of the Congress. I'm going to direct these funds to address this because I feel that this is a crisis.
Republican from Alaska there, a Republican from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, had this statement. I just met with President Trump and his team. It's clear to both of us that Democrats don't want to make a deal and will never support border wall/barriers on President Trump's watch, even though they did so in the past. They hate President Trump more than they want to fix problems, even problems they acknowledge to be real and serious in the past. Democrats will do everything in their power to defeat Trump in 2020. Mr. President, declare a national emergency now. Build a wall now. Chuck.
Well, I guess it's hard to tell whether we have entered the really absurd stage of this or the really serious stage of this. The reasons why it all seems so absurd is that both sides know what the deal to be done at the end of the day would be. It would be some form of wall funding for a concession on something Democrats really care about, like DACA. You start to see even some of the newly elected Democrats from swing districts talking about that. Trump in the past has said that his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, has been running around Capitol Hill seeing if there's any interest in that. So it's absurd that they can't get to yes on that. But the serious thing is, we've actually reached the point now where just our government is not functioning as it was intended. The separation of powers is about to be thrown out of the window here by, you know, this sort of off-the-cuff declaration of national emergency. I understand, and he probably has a leg to stand on legally here, but it's certainly not within the spirit of how these things are supposed to go. And it could just set us on a further downward spiral of government dysfunction because, as Lisa Murkowski says, somebody might try the same thing the next time around. One thing we've all learned out of this, Brett, there's a lot of these emergency powers kind of lying around up there on the shelf on Capitol Hill. It's kind of dangerous, you know, to have that kind of power just lying around there.
And there are some Republicans who mentioned concerns about giving away power, and obviously they had those concerns when President Obama issued executive orders.
So did I. I mean, I was I was in the crowd that was very critical of President Obama for using executive authority.
The pen on the phone?
The pen on the phone, not only on immigration, but on environmental regulations and so forth, doing these end runs around Congress to press his agenda, and I think this would be more of the same from Donald Trump. I think the precedent point that Lisa Murkowski makes is an important one. A liberal President Trump won't be president forever. Two can play this game. Oh, income inequality is a national emergency. I think we should spend X billion dollars on doing this, and I don't need Congress's approval. Look what President Trump did before I got here. So I think that is a serious concern. You also see senators from these states that are being hit by this shutdown, rural states, large forests, a lot of furloughed forest workers and so forth, Oregon, Alaska, Maine, and you're starting to see, I think, some fracturing on the right when it comes to standing together with the president on this, the longer it goes on. I mean, that was quite a scene we saw there with these congressmen out there speechifying to an empty chamber. They're not doing their job. They're not in Washington doing their job at the same time that 800,000 people today didn't get a paycheck. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck. This is a big deal for a lot of Americans, but a lot of those people in Washington who aren't, or are supposed to be in Washington, who aren't living paycheck to paycheck.
Well, I mean, nearly 80% of Americans apparently live paycheck to paycheck, according to the stats.
It's a very bad option.
The president's saying that they're going to make sure that they get all the back pay once this thing is over. I want to play this one more soundbite. This is the president on support for the border, is talking to Sean Hannity. Is there fracturing on the center left on this border issue?
Democrats in Congress, especially the new ones coming in, are starting to say, wait a minute, we can't win this battle with Trump because of the fact that it's just common sense. How can we say that a wall doesn't work?
I will vote for some money for physical barriers. Okay. It's not going to be, it's not going to be across the entire 2,000-mile stretch, and it's certainly not going to be a concrete wall, but it will be part of a package.
Charlie.
Look, I feel for federal workers, they've been treated very shabbily, and they have been for a long time. But let's not forget, the federal government is not here to provide jobs. It's here to serve the American people, and employing federal employees as part of that. As far as the separation of powers, I agree. I do not like that. But the idea that we're just now getting around to getting upset about that, I think is kind of ridiculous, considering over the past 20, 30 years, Republicans and Democrats are both to blame for this. Partisanship has taken over the separation of powers in a lot of ways, where if you have Democrats controlling Congress or Republicans controlling Congress and somebody in the same party controlling the White House, they will throw everything away and disregard their own the jealousy of their own interests in order to sort of advance partisanship. So I think that that's a real problem. But going back to the thing with President Obama, it's important to remember that, the pen on the phone thing was bad and everything. He paid a price for it. And the same thing would happen if you had a president who declared an emergency on the environment. They would pay a huge political price for it.
Good evening, welcome to Washington. I'm Brett Baer. It is payday for federal workers, but for about 800,000 of them, there is nothing new tonight to pay bills or buy food or put gas in the car. It is the first missed paycheck in the 3-week-long partial government shutdown. And it shines a new light on the impasse between a president demanding a border wall and congressional Democrats who refuse to give it to him. Once again tonight, there is the growing prospect President Trump will declare a national emergency to get the construction money flowing. But he appeared to put the brakes on that this afternoon, at least for now. We have Fox team coverage. Mike Emanuel is on Capitol Hill, where Congress is gone and hundreds of thousands of people are demanding some kind of action. We start off, as we often do, on the north lawn of the White House with Chief White House Correspondent John Roberts with the latest on this back and forth. Good evening, John.
Brett, good evening to you. President Trump kept up the pressure on Democrats today, hosting a roundtable here at the White House on border security. The question is, which pressure is greater? The president's argument about having to preserve national security, or the pressure that's coming up, the mounting pressure from hundreds of thousands of federal workers who are working without pay?
I'd rather not do it because this is something that Congress should easily do.
At a roundtable on border security today, President Trump said again he is holding off on declaring a national emergency, that he'd rather work with Congress, though he won't wait forever.
If at some point they just can't do it, this is a 15-minute meeting. If they can't do it, I will declare a national emergency.
The president insists the Republican Party is united on his demands for border security, but some cracks appearing today on the issue of an emergency declaration. In an interview, Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley saying, "I don't think he should do that. I think it's a bad precedent, and it contravenes the power of the purse that comes from the elected representatives of the people." But Senator Lindsey Graham, who met with President Trump today, tweeted, "Mr. President, declare a national emergency now. Build a wall now." If he does declare a national emergency, President Trump will need cash already appropriated to build the wall. Among the funds he's eyeing, $14 billion in a 2018 emergency appropriation that included money for hurricane relief in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico's Governor Ricardo Rossello reacting on Twitter today, "Mr. President, don't tear down U.S. citizens in order to build a wall. Help the USA rebuild." While President Trump insists he 100% has the authority to declare an emergency and build a border wall, he does expect a legal challenge.
What will happen? I'll be sued. It'll be brought to the Ninth Circuit.
With federal workers missing their first paychecks because of the partial shutdown today, President Trump took steps to mitigate the impact on federal workers, promising to sign legislation to guarantee back pay.
Stop the shutdown when? Today! When? Today!
But at least one group of federal employees isn't waiting. Air traffic controllers filed a lawsuit today, claiming that forcing them to work without compensation is a violation of the Constitution. In an effort to entice Democrats to the table, President Trump is subtly shifting his language, saying he would be open to a broader agreement that could include immigration-related items that Democrats have made a priority if they'll fund his wall.
If they came to me with a package beyond the barrier, and if it was something that we all agreed with, that the senators agreed with, that everybody liked, it's common sense. Most of this is common sense. I'm all for it.
So far, no indication from Democrats that they are willing to take the president up on that offer. The president will spend the weekend working the phones, talking with Republican members of Congress, but so far there's nothing to indicate that there is anything that even begins to look like a light at the end of the shutdown tunnel. And the president will take a little bit of a detour on Monday. He's inviting the champion Clemson Tigers to the White House for a celebration before taking off for New Orleans. Brett?
John Roberts, live on the North Lawn. John, thanks.